Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Smith. I'm the Washington editor of the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette and president of the National Press Club. We're the world's leading professional organization for journalists, and on behalf of our 3,500 members worldwide, I'd like to welcome you and our guests today. I'd also like to welcome those of you who are watching on C-SPAN or listening on XM satellite radio. We're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year, and we've rededicated ourselves to the future of journalism through informative programming, journalism education, and fostering a free press worldwide. For more information about the National Press Club, please visit our website at www.press.org. We're looking forward to today's speech, and afterward I'll ask as many questions from the audience as time permits. I'd now like to introduce our head table guests and ask them to stand briefly when their names are called. From your right, Catherine Skiba of U.S. News and World Report. Myron Belkind, retired AP and the newly elected secretary of the club. Mark Hamrick of AP Broadcast and our membership secretary. Renu Rayasam of Kiplinger. Melissa Charbonneau, the vice chairwoman of the Speakers Committee. Skipping over our speaker for just a minute. Bob Cardin of Cardin Communication and the Speakers Committee member who organized today's event. Thank you so much, Bob. Donna Leinwan of USA Today and the president-elect of the club. Andrew Schneider of Kiplinger, Washington Editors, and Timothy Berger of Bloomberg. Welcome, everyone. There are few, if any, columnists more influential than the New York Times' Paul Krugman. The Washington Monthly has called him the most important political columnist in America. Adding considerable heft to his reputation, the Nobel Committee awarded Krugman the 2008 Nobel Prize for Economics for his analysis of the economies of scale on international trade. Plus, he does what really smart people rarely do. Krugman communicates in a way that is accessible to people without degrees in economics. He does that without being condescending or dumbing down his thoughts, and his many readers are grateful. We hope he'll give us a flight plan out of our mess today, or at least enlighten us. Paul Krugman grew up in Long Island and received his undergraduate degree at Yale and his doctorate in economics at MIT. In addition to his perch at the New York Times, Krugman is a professor of economics and international affairs at Princeton University. He's the author of several books, including Conscience of a Liberal, also the title of his blog, and Return of the Depression, Economics, and the Crisis of 2008. Krugman's been a harsh and unrelenting critic of the Bush administration's economic and foreign policies. He blames much of the economic troubles on President Bush, Alan Greenspan, and some of the more notable architects of deregulation, including former Republican Senator Phil Gramm. While Krugman is certainly a liberal by temperament and definition, he has at times traveled the political spectrum. He worked for a short period for the Reagan Administration as a staff member for the Council on Economic Advisors. Who might have guessed that? Please help me give a warm National Press Club welcome to Paul Krugman.
Well, thank you. By the way, I'd like to take exception to being called a harsh critic of the Bush administration's economic and foreign policies. I've also been a harsh critic of its environmental policies, its judicial. Anyway, all right. By the way, that thing about the Reagan administration, yes, I was there as a technocrat at the council. I was the chief international staffer. Chief domestic staffer was a guy by the name of Larry Summers. Don't know what happened. Anyway, so just, okay. So I'm here to talk, at least, well, obviously, what's on everybody's minds is the crisis. And I have a new book which is a much revised version of an old book, which is also about the crisis. It's called The Return of Depression Economics and the Crisis of 2008. And I'm going to structure these remarks around what that book is about, and where we are right now in the economy, which are, I think, more or less the same thing. So let me start maybe in an odd place. Trying to think about this talk, I realized that what was in my mind, among other things, when I wrote Depression Economics in its first version, was a talk I'd heard many years before from Alice Rivlin, former OMB chair at Brookings now, I believe, who talked about how in policy there were hard problems and easy problems. There are easy problems were ones where you might have a political hitch. You couldn't try and figure out how to get the necessary votes to pass what needed to be done in Congress, but you did know what to do. It was not fundamentally conceptually hard. So something like finding enough money to repair the highways is an easy problem. Hard problems are things where we really don't have good answers. We don't know really what we should be doing, or we have some things we might try, but we don't really know how to bring these things under control. So something like reducing the crime rate is a hard problem. We did it, but we actually still don't know how we did it. So it's one of those things that is really difficult. In economics, or in macroeconomics, in managing the economy as a whole, we had a traditional division between hard problems and easy problems. Stagflation is a hard problem. When you've got high inflation and you're trying to bring it down, but you really don't want to have high unemployment in the process, we don't know how to do that. Stagflation was a hard problem. No one in economics is puzzled by the fact that it was very expensive and difficult to bring the high inflation of the late 1970s down. That was known to be a hard problem. On the other hand, just plain old-fashioned recession, just plain lack of demand, there's not enough spending to keep people fully employed, that's supposed to be an easy problem. We thought we knew, that you just have the Fed print some more money, maybe you just have some federal spending, but mostly we thought that pretty much Uncle Alan or Uncle Ben or their equivalent can deal with ordinary recession type problems quite easily. Demand is easy, and it's not just that's not just the way people talk. Occasionally they put it in print. So I actually began the current edition of Depression Economics with a quote from Robert Lucas, the very great economist, Nobel laureate from some years back, who gave, as his presidential address to the American Economics Association, he started by saying the problem of depression prevention has been solved. This is not a problem. And basically, the lecture goes on to say we should be worrying about long-run growth because we know how to handle downturns. That's not a problem. But actually, about 10 years ago, I and a fair number of other people began to have some real doubts about whether the problem of depression prevention had been solved. And that came initially out of the experiences of Asian economies in crisis, looking at the problems of Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, South Korea, and above all, Japan, and saying, maybe this thing is not so easy to deal with. There was a little nest, actually, turns out, at Princeton of economists who were deeply concerned, who looked at, in particular, at Japan and said, that could be us. Maybe the problems that they're having in Japan are not so much because of fundamental, specific Japanese problems, but maybe they suggest a vulnerability that could be in all of our economies. That little nest of economists included me, of course, Lars Svensson, who's now at the Riksbank in Sweden, Mike Woodford, and a guy by the name of Ben Bernanke. We all looked at those problems and thought that, this may be an omen. What has happened in these Asian economies could possibly happen to us as well. And of course, now it has. Hence the new edition of the book, and hence my great concern at the situation we're in. So let me tell you what it was that. What I call depression economics, what it is that is the issue here. Now, the normal way that we deal with any slump, the normal way we deal with a downturn is for the central bank, the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank or the Bank of Japan, to deal with it essentially by printing money. Now, it's not quite that. That's not literally what they do. They credit the accounts of participating banks and buy short-term government debt in return. But open market operations, you basically push money out there, push down the interest rates on short-term government debt, whether it's treasury bills or their equivalent in other countries. And that's normally enough to get things moving. Lower interest rates on the things that the Fed controls most directly translate into lower interest rates on things that matter to the private sector. So when you cut interest rates, when you cut the target Fed funds rate. That eventually works through to a cut in mortgage interest rates, cut in corporate bond rates, investment increases,